Over the past decade, Singapore's platform economy has grown rapidly. Many now choose to earn their main income as private hire drivers, food delivery riders, or other platform-based roles. Everyone needs to plan for their future, housing, health, and retirement. For platform workers, these can be even more challenging. And for today's discussion on the Dollars and Cents podcast, we want to explore why financial planning feels harder for platform workers, and more importantly, how tools like CPF can help bridge this gap. And joining me in today's show is Dinesh from our editorial team. Dinesh, welcome to the show.
Back here again, and CPF is a pet topic, so I think it'll be an interesting discussion.
So let's just start with the basic, right? Why is financial planning so much harder for platform workers compared to salary employees?
It's a bit harder because you don't have CPF. So for example, when I first started working as an employee, I didn't really have to think about anything, Every month, at the end of the month, you will just get your salary. And then along with that, money is going into your CPF account, right? So you kind of start saving for your healthcare, start saving for your retirement, start saving for your home down payment from the first day you started working. And then on the flip side, right, the platform workers. So you can argue whether they get more, less, same amount, or they get everything in cash. But whether that's the case or not, they have to then have the administrative task of, doing, saving their money diligently, setting aside, putting in their CPF accounts, and then doing all those other administrative side of the work as well, which is not as user-friendly. The CPF just makes it easier.
I think that's one thing, but for sure the other consideration and factor here is really in terms of not just the administrative issue of topping out CPF, but also the fact that their earnings are also fluctuating.
Yeah.
Why do you think fluctuating income makes it so difficult for people to save for the long term?
Fluctuating income doesn't mean it fluctuates on a monthly basis. It can fluctuate on a daily basis as well, right? So for employees, I remember when I first started working, I would get a salary and I would get it quite regularly at the end of the month, and I know how much I would get as well. So then it makes financial planning a little bit easier in that respect.
You can budget what you're going to be receiving and what you can spend on and what you can't afford, right?
Yeah.
And I guess when it comes to platform workers, without that certainty of knowing at the end of each month or even each week how much they're going to take home, it just makes that ability to budget so much more challenging because in some sense, you can't even set aside how much you think you can save. Because what if your earnings are lower than what you expect and you have to cover your expenses first?
And I think like we mentioned as well, not only that, but they also have that whole aspect of what if they fall sick? What if they can't work, right? And then what if they want to go on a holiday? Simple things like that employees take for granted. We go on holiday, we apply leave. But they go on holiday, they don't get paid, right? So these simple things have to be taken into account when they do financial planning as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Let's just talk about CPF itself, right? What role do you think CPF helps in Singaporeans when it comes to planning for our long-term needs?
So CPF, I think from an employee perspective, so I just kind of recall back when I first started working, at the end of the month, I knew part of my salary would go towards CPF.
When you're below the age of 55, you contribute 20% and your employer also contributes an additional 17%.
Yeah.
So the total contribution to your CPF account is actually 37% of your gross salary.
Yeah.
And that's split into 3 accounts, which is your ordinary account, which can be used for things like paying even for housing, mortgage, education, insurance. Our special account, which is mainly set aside for our retirement, as well as MediSave, which is for medical and healthcare as well. So I think the other thing that some people is also worth noting is the interest you earn. It actually earns an interest of between base interest of at least 2.5 to 4%. And sometimes you get bonus interest as well.
Yeah.
And what happens over time is that this is compounded as well to help us grow our CPF savings. The problem I feel with platform workers is that, if you're not contributing to your CPF account, especially at a younger age, what happens is that because savings and interest also takes time to compound.
Yeah.
So the ability to compound our interest is lost, especially in the earlier years.
I mean, my thoughts can be boiled down to like one simple figure that I have in my mind. So the FRS, right? That's usually the figure that, is given to say, hey, if you achieve this amount, then you should be able to achieve a basic standard of retirement. Right, so the FRS this year is actually $213,000. So if you're just starting to work this year and you see the FRS at $213,000, it will feel, same like I did when I first started working, that FRS amount, it will feel like a almost unachievable amount. Like how am I going to make a few $100s of contribution and get to $213,000? And not even that, It increases every year. So that's where compounding interest, and the power of compounding comes in over time, right?
Right.
You contribute. And I think, glad to say that I've been gainfully employed for all these years. And now when I look at my special account, I'm making a very decent headway to achieving that amount. I can see that when I reach 65, I may be able to reach the amount now. It's much more acceptable.
Just talking about CPF contribution for platform workers. So I think this is something that's quite new. So from the start of this year, 1st January 2025, because of the Platform Workers Act, there are new protection for platform workers covering work injuries, compensation, and most importantly, CPF contributions as well. So I'll just focus on the CPF contribution part, right?
Yep.
So CPF contribution will be mandatory for younger platform workers born 1995 or later. So basically, if you are age 30 this year or younger, you will have to make CPF contribution as a platform workers. This contribution will be phasing gradually and, most importantly, eventually match those of salaried employees by 2029, which is 20% of net earnings for those of us below the age of 55.
Yes.
And for 2025, alone for 2025, it's just 8% of net earnings for those age 35 and below. So for older workers born 1994 or earlier, they can also opt into this CPF contribution. And if they do, they receive contribution also from the platform that they work for, similar to how regular employees like us also receive CPF contributions from our employers.
So from a financial planning perspective that we're talking about, so when you have CPF contributions, you contribute. So it's not just easier for you to make that contribution, but you also get the employer CPF contributions now.
Yeah, I
right?
think that's huge, right?
So that's more money actually.
Yeah, which platform workers previously did not enjoy.
Correct. Right, so this is extra money. And then obviously what it is meant to be used for are those three things that you mentioned, right? OA, they're building for their home ownership from a young age, right? So maybe it's mandatory for those 30 and below, but it is wise, I think, personally, for those even older to actually opt in, because they get this free money and they also get that ability to pay for their home mortgages using the OA.
Yep.
Right. So previously, maybe they were doing it in cash. Now they can do it this way, and then pay for their home mortgages in their OA monies as well. And I think all these CPF contributions are all tax deductible as well, right? So,
that's awesome. Yeah.
So obviously when you make the contribution, it's tax deductible. When the employer makes the contribution, it's not accounted for tax purposes also, I think. That's the OA. And then SA as well, they start saving for their retirement from day one.
Yeah.
Or from the day they start actually. Employees day one, but this can be day one for them.
And I think there's one more point to add on as well. So some people may look at CPF contribution as something that will, reduce their take-home salary, even though it's technically contributed to their CPF account and they receive additional top-ups from their operator platform that they work for as well. But I'd just like to say that in the first place, even if you choose not to opt for CPF contribution, you still have to make MediSave contribution. So for MediSave contribution, I believe for those who are 35 and below, it would have been 8% of net earnings to begin with. So it's not like self-employed people or platform workers weren't contributing to the CPF. They were contributing. It is compulsory to contribute to your MediSave. So this contribution to your CPF account, assuming it's 20%, it takes into consideration MediSave contribution as well, which means that by doing so, you are also contributing to your MediSave as well. Basically, right now, I think as of 2025, we talk about 20% of net earnings being contributed, but that's actually the number that we're working towards by 2029, right?
Yes.
So by 2029, it is the intention to make sure that platform workers, when they contribute, they're on par with salary employees, but it's a gradual increment to that level. So for just specifically for 2025, it's 10.5% of net earnings, and your platform that you work for will contribute an additional 3.5%, and that makes it a total of 14% for 2025. And this is for those 35 and below. For those above 35 to 45, it's 11.5% in terms of contribution from the platform workers, and 15% in total once you take into consideration the operator contribution as well. So here's the interesting thing I figured out, right?
Okay.
So for example, right, let's say you're a platform worker today, 35 and below. So you have to contribute 10.5%, or you contribute 10.5% to your CPF, right? But in the first place, you are already supposed to contribute 8% to your MediSave to begin with. So in actual fact, you are only contributing 2.5% more for 2025, whereas you receive an additional 3.5% contribution from the platform operator.
Yeah.
On top of that, 100% for 2025, because we have this thing called the Platform Workers CPF Transition Support Scheme, okay, 100% of OA, SA or RA increase from the previous year will be offset by the government through this scheme, which in actual fact means that for 2025, let's say somebody, 31 years old, earns $2,000 each month from the platform that they work for, right? So by right, they have to contribute 8% to their MediSave. So that's $160.
Yep.
If they choose to contribute to all three accounts, it's 10.5%. So that means they contribute $210 and an extra of $50, but that $50 will be offset by the government.
Okay.
So
what you're saying is there is a no-brainer to actually opt in.
Plus, they get the platform operator contribution as well, which I didn't even mention yet.
Yes. So that's an additional 3.5% from the
for this year.
I want to go one step further.
Why would you? Okay.
I want to go one step further, right? And this one, I'm not sure how many people it attributes to, but this is something to take in consideration as well. With CPF contributions, it also matters how much you earn.
Yeah.
So let's say you work for 3 platforms and then you don't...
you're hustling
or 4 platforms.
Wow,
I'm not sure whether they earn all their money on one platform. I'm not
maybe
that
a
industry,
couple.
But let's say you work for 4 platforms and then you earn $500 per platform. Right? So that's $2,000 for these 4 platforms, right? So if you earn $500 and below, you actually make 0 contributions on your end.
Okay.
The employee end. Whereas all these things that you just mentioned still continue because the employer still contributes.
So you can still be making $2,000, but because you're making $500 per platform, your CPF contribution is actually nil, at least because $500 and below doesn't require CPF contribution. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
But the platform operator have to contribute.
Correct.
Because they are required to.
Yeah. So I think it also depends
Does
what
that
kind
how
of...
it work? Is it per platform?
Yeah, I mean it's per employer for employees, so I'm believing it's
that's crazy, man.
Platform as well. So depends on what kind of platform worker you are as well. This might be a consideration. So if you're someone who maybe just work on it in your free time and you're a bit older, it doesn't really make a lot of sense not to opt in. Right? If you're only earning $500 and below.
There's this CPF transition support scheme, which means your additional contribution that you have to make will be either fully or partially offset by the government, depending on what year is it. Already is incentive enough to do the contribution. In addition, you also receive the platform operator's contribution.
Yes.
So I think, I think that can be very useful, particularly I believe for younger people who are just starting out in their careers and they want to start, accumulate savings even at a young age, so that, hopefully by the time they're older like us, they have a bit more savings that can earn them interest.
When we say young people, we are talking about 30 and below here, but I feel like there's a long runway between 31 and 55 as well.
Right.
And I think these people have enough time to, use CPF to save up for their retirement as well. Even if maybe they don't need it for housing because they might have already bought their house, right?
Yep. And just one more thing, since we're talking about like making platform workers earning on the lower end of the spectrum. So I'm not sure if you know, but for platform workers as well, they also qualify for Workfare income supplement, WIS, right? And so platform workers also contribute for that previously, or at least I think currently. So when you earn $3,000 or lower each month, you qualify for Workfare income supplement, whether or not you're a salary employee or a platform worker. Right. But for platform workers, they actually receive a higher proportion of their payments in CPF today. Okay. But if they were to opt in for the CPF contributions to OASA and MediSave, they will actually receive a higher proportion of their Workfare income supplement in cash of about 40% compared to 10% today. So I think that makes sense, but it's also another incentive why it really, from a dollars and cents point of view, contributing to your CPF account for platform workers makes sense even if they are not mandated to do so.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is targeting lower income workers as well.
Yeah.
And I think the intention maybe in the past was for it to beef up their CPF account.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously with this new Platform Workers Act in place, their CPF account is already being beefed up, right? So then they maybe enjoy what ordinary low-wage employees would have enjoyed, so on par with them as well.
Yeah. And I think it's very important to say, I think sometimes it may not necessarily be low-wage worker in the traditional sense that they...
No, I mean, just to put out the figures, right? I think based on what I'm reading here, earn an average gross monthly income of not more than 3,000 in the past 12 months. So I think it's not like low wage as well.
Yeah, but even then, I just want to say that it's not necessarily a low-wage workers in the sense that they can't make more. It could also be a deliberate choice, right? So you could include people who are older workers who just don't want to work as long hours as they need to, maybe just a few hours a day, as well as part-timers or homemakers who are just to make making part-time income. And they are earning less than $3,000 a month in a way by choice because they're not working a lot. And some of these people also qualify for Workfare income supplement, and these are some additional benefits they can receive on top of the CPF contribution that they also enjoy from the platform. I just want to also talk about something which I'm sure people who are watching this is asking also, which is the trade-off, right? So obviously the reason why it's not such an easy decision is because there are short-term trade-offs when you contribute to your CPF account, and that comes in the form of lower take-home salary. So for example, by 2029, when it's 20% of net earnings, some people might feel that, hey, I'm already having to deal with fluctuating income on a daily basis. It's hard for me to plan for my expenses at the end of the month because, what if I earn a little bit lesser and I can't afford to pay for certain bills that I have to pay at the end of the month. And then now you're asking me to, contribute to CPF in which I can't use the money to actually pay for my expenses at the end of the month. What are your thoughts on this?
I think this is quite real, right? And that's maybe something that they will definitely feel at the start, a lower take-home pay. But I think one caveat here is also that, when you make CPF contributions, you can pay for your home in CPF. You can use all of it to pay for your home. So hopefully that negates some of the cons, right? So that's
because
one.
In a way, if I'm not wrong, and I'm just going off pure memory and knowledge, most of us contribute about 20% of our salary to our CPF account. And I think at 35 and below, 21% of it goes into our OA, right? So in other words, the amount we contribute to our CPF account, assuming we use everything in our OA to pay for our mortgage, we're actually getting more because of our employer's contribution from our OA than if we just keep it in cash, right?
I think you're perfectly right, but I want to also say that this maybe only applies to
35 and below.
35 and below.
Okay.
So as you age, and I'm looking at the actual figures now, so
the OA proportion.
So it's not just 21%, it's 23% for those who are 35 and below. And then when you go to 35 to 45, then it becomes 21. As you grow older, it gets lower. Then maybe the math, you got to think about it.
Yeah, but I guess my point here is that, and that's just to substantiate what you're saying, right? Which is that our contribution to our CPF account might result in a lower take-home salary. That is true. But if we, for example, have a home mortgage to pay for, then it really doesn't matter because we can still use the contribution as well as our employer or platform contribution to pay for our home mortgage, which we would otherwise need to pay using cash.
Yeah, exactly. Then obviously there'll be people who say, hey, I'm a bit older, I've already paid down most of my home. Then lower take home maybe equates into a larger concern for them. And for those people, I think I would say age between 31 and 55 is still a long runway to retirement. Even at 55, what is going to be the retirement age by the time they do retire, within 2030 is going to go up to 65. 10 years money or CPF contribution can compound. Like we said, 4% at least in the CPF SA. Then it can also be up to 6% because you earn 1% more on your first 60,000, 1% more on your first 30,000 when you're 55 and above as well. Right? So up to 6%. If you have very little money in your SA, it can compound quite a fair bit in that 10 years. And if you're 31, it can compound a lot, right? By the time you reach retirement. So I think retirement security is one of the other reasons I would say, hey, it's another consideration. Even if it's a lower take-home pay, retirement security is another consideration.
There is other schemes as well you can use to boost your retirement savings. So we have the Match Retirement Savings Scheme, which allows individuals to actually top up their RA as well, 55 and above. And they also get matching contributions from the government up to a certain cap of $2,000 per year. So for those of you who are watching and you're a bit older and you haven't reached your retirement sum that you want to aim for, you can also consider using some of these ways to actually increase your retirement savings as well. Can you think of any reason why someone who is a platform worker and he's 31 and above this year, so he has the option not to contribute?
Yeah.
Can you think of any reason why they shouldn't contribute? Because I just can't.
In the past, before the CPF Act came into play, platform workers were treated like self-employed persons.
Yes.
Right. So for self-employed persons, maybe cash flow is extremely valuable.
Because they are running a
pouring
business
into a small business.
Okay.
Whereas for platform workers, they've already been segregated as a separate group of workers, you know, in a sense that, they don't have a lot of control over the work that they do, which is why this new classification came into place, right? So with that in mind, they don't really require this cash flow buffer for building businesses. What they should do, then is make use of CPF to save up for their retirement, which is the next most important thing they should think about.
Yep. So if you choose not to contribute and receive contribution from your platform, then you are probably leaving money on the table that you should have already been getting anyway, right? Just one last question, some practical advice here. What do you think are some steps platform workers can take today to, get ahead, especially for the older ones who feel like, they didn't enjoy this in their younger days?
I think one good advice, and this really comes from me speaking to some self-employed people as well, they treat themselves as employees.
Okay.
So, even negating the CPF Platform Workers Act, right? If you treat yourself as an employee, then you will very easily see that, CPF makes a lot of sense. So just because a self-employed has that decision to treat himself as an employee, then he feels that he's making that decision. And whereas platform workers maybe don't have that autonomy, but it's great in a way because you're forced to save for your home ownership, you're forced to save for your retirement. So treat it as, seeing yourself as an employee for your future benefit. And while there's no deadline to opt in if you're older than 30 this year, I think opting in as soon as possible gets that compounding started as soon as possible as well.
Yeah, and the CPF transition support scheme as well.
Yeah,
which you enjoy.
Don't lose or leave money on the table like we've said, right?
Especially if the government wants to give it to you.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you mentioned as well is that why not think about CPF a little bit more? Right? Maybe in the past they didn't think about CPF much, maybe other than their Medisave contributions, but think about CPF a little bit more, how you can even boost your retirement income, because maybe you have missed out 10 years of CPF contributions. Maybe look at it at how you're going to catch back up that 10 years that you've lost out. So there's a lot of other contribution schemes that you can go into, the RSTU, where you contribute to your, say, a special account as well.
Yeah, your retirement saving top-ups, right? So I think definitely, even if you are no longer in your 20s anymore, you're in your 30s and you feel like your CPF saving is not as much as you wish for it to be, I think it's never too late. I think you can firstly start by making regular contributions to all three accounts, enjoy the additional contributions from the platform and of course the government grants in the next few years, and then also consider volunteering top up to your retirement account, which a small amount today can compound to a large amount by the time we retire, right? So to sum up, financial planning is definitely tougher for platform workers because of fluctuating income and fewer traditional benefits. But with the changes in the CPF scheme, workers now have stronger tools to build long-term financial security for themselves and their families. The key though is to start early, contribute consistently, and make the most of CPF schemes. Your future self will thank you. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in today to the Dollars and Cents podcast. If you like our content, remember to follow us on YouTube or Spotify, wherever you're watching or listening to this. We will see you again.